there, I'm Kayleigh from Mastermind Adventures, the Mastermind Adventures adventure specialist, and I am here talking to one of our fantastic pro GMs, Joshua Printiss. Hello, Joshua.
Hello. How are you doing,
How's
Kayleigh?
good? How are you? How's it going?
Doing pretty good.
Good, cool. So, just here to talk about being a pro GM in D&D and any other games in Mastermind Adventures. So, tell me a little bit about how you got started with how you got started playing tabletop games.
uh, so when I was younger, I used to play Magic the Gathering with a bunch of friends in middle school. And one of my friends, actually the one who kind of got me started, it told me his older brother ran a D&D game. And so he invited me over and played, and it was so much fun. It was D&D 3.0 at the time.
Mm.
And then after that, it just kind of really just took off. We started making a game every weekend out of it and playing, and eventually I wanted to start trying to DM myself and putting that creativity and that passion into the worlds, and bringing kind of the ideas I get to life. And been doing it ever since.
How has that been? What was the changing from like player to DM? What were the major differences?
Um, well, once I became a DM, I've missed being a player because that becomes
Mm-hmm.
a seldom thing now.
Mm.
Um, One of the biggest changes for me was, instead of kind of just focusing on one thing, I had to focus on multiple, acting more on the spot and more on your toes, I guess. Like players, they still have to kind of think in the moment, but they have that, all right, guys, what are we going to do? Let's take some time and figure this out. As a GM, from my perspective, I don't always have that. I might have something written out or ready to go, but then my players can go, you know what? I'm going to go over here instead. It's like, okay, we're rolling with this now. Let's go. Um, and there are even times where I'll have something written out in mid session, or like they're walking into this room, and I'll decide, you know what? I don't want to do that. I want to do this instead. And so it's been a lot of fun, letting my creativity and acting in the moment essentially
Mm-hmm.
out more. And honestly, those tend to, I feel, be the improv. There it is. I feel like when I can act more on improv or instinct almost, those are the better sessions. Those are the most memorable ones that players have come back to me and said, oh, I really, really enjoyed this.
How would you describe your GM style overall?
Um, I'm very much a fan of the rule of cool. So if it, to an extent, if you can describe to me why this would work or how you want to do this, I am more than happy to work with you on it. The rules say that technically a tabaxi can't use his tail to pick up a dagger or to, open a door handle or something like that. But if a player wants to literally come to me and be like, hey, I want to actually spend the time using my tail like on a daily basis, like an exercise to strengthen it, I'm more than happy to work with that and be like, okay, yeah, cool. You know what? If you're going to dedicate 30 minutes, an hour a day to just, curling a dumbbell with your tail, then yeah, you can definitely pick up a dagger or, roll to open a door or something like that. You're going to do a check. But yeah, I love character development. I love when people get invested into their characters. To me, there's nothing more fun than really seeing that immersion.
Yeah. So you said you do more sort of improv than planning. Have you had any instances where you're like do a lot of planning and like type up something and you're like, oh, this is totally what's going to happen in a session, and then your players
Oh yeah.
immediately do a completely different thing?
Oh yeah. I had spent There was a time I got on Foundry and typed up 6 pages, spent 16 hours creating this map, writing out this story, and, thinking, oh, they're going to love this. This is going to be so much fun, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we come into that session, and the prior session, they had been told, hey, this is what's going on in this town. And my players looked at me and went, you know what? We don't want to do this right now. So we're going to go over here. And I'm like, okay, that's what we're doing then.
You're just like, all right, let me throw out those notes.
Well, so the way I work that is I don't believe in railroading or shotgunning players. I never have. I've never really liked that. I prefer it to be about the player. So it's not about my story being told. It's about what they want to do.
Yeah.
In that same mindset, I will definitely take that, and it's like, okay, they're going to get to this adventure later. But at the same time, I like there to be repercussions. Okay, this village is being attacked by raiders. You guys don't want to go? Okay, cool. What do you want to do? Oh, 3 sessions later, you guys would now want to go, or you're leaving town or going to go through this town? Well, the town's been burned down. They're hostile now because nobody came to their rescue. There are repercussions for the actions.
How much do you like to work with, like, backstory or something? Like, if a player comes in and is like, I have a bunch of backstory. Or
I
like,
absolutely
I don't have any backstory, but I want
backstory.
I want to work on something with you.
Yeah. I absolutely love backstories and character creation and just working with them. I have spent hours just on calls or with people hanging out, discussing with them what they want to do with their backstory, what direction they're going in. I'll throw out ideas and, back and forth, and just it's probably one of my favorite things to do. Because I really love that, bringing the character to life. I like that doesn't feel like it's just a piece of paper, because to me, D&D, any tabletop, is a chance and a moment for escape. It is for you to leave behind work and troubles and the stress and anxiety of daily life at times, and just lose yourself in this other world, this other character. And that's my goal as a DM, is that I want to give people that escape, to give people that immersion where they don't have to worry about, I got to get groceries, or I've got to pay my bills, or I've got work tomorrow. You don't have to worry about that, because you are now this fighter going to go save these people from the undead.
Are there any moments that have, like, challenged you as a GM where you're like, ooh, how do I deal with that?
Several. Thankfully, I've never had a player call me out on it. They usually think, they're like, how did you know I was gonna do that? I was like, the trick is I didn't. But yeah, there have been several moments, and my players have liked to push that. They're like, you know what? I want to see what he does with this. I'm trying to think of one just off the top of my head now. The one that comes to mind wasn't so much like a stressful point, but one of my players had wanted to just interact with one of the pirates on a ship they were on. It's like, okay, yeah, no problem. I'll throw out some voice and just kind of go with that. Okay. My players started dying laughing from the voice, because I made him like this stereotypical, mostly illiterate, just pirate crew hand. And so the bosun of the ship was kind of like Smee from Peter Pan.
Yeah.
My players thought it would be the most funny thing in the world to get me to voice this very illiterate pirate and this very fast-talking, butt-kissing pirate, and have them interact. So that's what my players did. One of them is talking to this pirate, his name's Clyde, and he kind of is talking like, oh, you dumb. Do you not know how to tie a rope? What are you doing over there? And so they call over, they're like, we need you over here to sort this fight out. And they literally, for 20 minutes, just watched me voice these two characters, throwing in little chimes every so often to make sure the conversation kept going. No matter how I tried to, like, get the two NPCs to just separate and go their own ways, they're like, oh, no, what about this? What about this? And I'm like,
okay, sorry about that. We can edit that out.
That's fine.
Yeah, so you were saying that the voices.
Actually, probably one of the more challenging points, now that I'm thinking combat related, I like to create items for my players. I like to create monsters that aren't necessarily in the books as well to add more to the players who do play regularly. So, you'll get some players, they'll see a creature and they're good about it too. Their characters don't know that it's a basilisk, but the player is like, oh, that's a basilisk, or that's a lich, a hydra, whatever. I like to create my own so they don't see what's coming. And one of the scenarios, I created this creature that they had to drink a potion to make themselves ethereal to walk through this wall. As they did, this creature was lying in wait and put something in the back of their neck. It's like a tendril, and it delved into their mind and brought up what they feared or thought they had lost. And so I came up on the spot with a scenario for all 5 of my players that, because once it happened, the entire room went dark. Nobody else was there except for them and this person. And the premise behind it was that if they followed this person into this void that they were going into, they were lost. So I had them make saves, and I role played 5 different scenarios on the spot for each of them to try and further that moment. And I let the players do whatever they want. One of them literally fell to their knees and started crying. One of them started trying to sprint towards this person. It was definitely challenging, but it was probably one of the more fun things I've done, just kind of watching my players' reactions to it.
So that was another example of you, because you said it was based off of their fears. So it was another example of being able to tie in like character backstories and motivations and things like that. Very cool. So let's talk a little bit about Mastermind. What would you say if someone's like, why should I get a pro GM? What are the advantages of getting a pro GM over, just asking my buddy to to DM a session for me? What would you say would be the advantages?
Well, a pro GM, I feel like they are going to maybe try to work more individually with the players. Like, I'm not saying DMs don't do that, but if you're looking for a game that's going to last, a pro GM is going to try kind of that extra step, I think, to make sure that it keeps going, to make sure that you are truly enjoying the experience where, your buddy is going to try and, make sure you're having fun and it's lighthearted and it's great. But I feel like a pro GM is going to try to make sure that experience is just a step further than a normal session.
You mentioned too that like you DM all the time, you rarely get to play, so that's another option. If you have someone,
it is true.
If you have a forever DM in your group, or you are a forever DM, why not treat them?
Well, exactly. There's that too. The other thing is it can be a learning experience, really. If there's a GM out there or a new GM out there who can't necessarily get experience, or they're having trouble grasping at things, playing in a free one shot or in a campaign for a month or something like that could even get players and other newer GMs to learn and experience new things. Because that's the other thing is when you're hiring a GM for hire, you're going to hire somebody and you're not going to know their play style necessarily until you talk with them. You're not going to know what you're going into because everybody is different. Everybody has their own little quirks. I could love basic role playing and be very light on combat. There could be another GM who's the same way, but that doesn't necessarily mean that our mindsets and play styles are the same. So it does also give you a chance to experience different things when you're hiring somebody.
What have you learned from being a GM?
A lot. I've learned how tabletop games can really bring people together. I have seen a wide and vast array of emotions, ranging from fits of laughter that last for minutes and minutes. I've seen some of my players so invested in their character that a specific scenario brought them to tears. I've watched them come together to overcome specific obstacles. It has been a huge honor and privilege to be able to be a GM for as long as I have and see all these little things. And the little things are what I really do appreciate the most. It's also a learning experience for me. Every time I do run a session, I'm sure every GM has it. Did they like this? Could I have done this differently? What should I have done here? Was this a horrible side? Every GM has it. You are your own worst enemy. But I try to push past that and learn from every single session. Like, okay, they seem to like this. They said they like this. What can I do next time though, so they don't expect it?
So like each time you feel
Hmm.
like you learn something a little more for the future.
Yep.
And I've sort of been say using DM and GM interchangeably so far. I've been talking sort of about Dungeons and Dragons, but about tabletop games in total. I know you also run Pathfinder. You have experience with some other games, Call of Cthulhu, Witcher. Do you
Hmm.
want to talk about like what the differences are? If someone,
Yeah.
maybe someone's tried D&D, they're curious about other systems.
Yeah, of course. So other than the environment changes, like there, I have Pathfinder and Starfinder. Starfinder is very much a futuristic, you're in a spaceship, you're going planet to planet instead of city to city. Whereas Pathfinder and D&D are very archaic, medieval magic, things like that. Past that, you do have things that are kind of like well known, like The Witcher, which is a lot of fun, but the systems are different, which I've enjoyed doing them to experience more things and to learn these new systems. With The Witcher, you're not using a D20 system, you're using just a D10. With Shadowrun, you're using a handful of D6s. And so instead of adding up all the numbers, you're just looking at how many, like you might roll 15 D6s and you're just counting the fives and sixes, and those are your successes. Each one brings its own unique play style to the table, and all of them have been fun. I've ran Shadowrun, I've ran Pathfinder, D&D, Call of Cthulhu, Witcher. I have a new one called Locust that is based around fear and kind of just like overcoming those obstacles.
Yeah, I've heard about that one actually. It sounds like very personal too because it's like
Hmm.
you sort of build like personal like nightmares for the
Hmm.
sort of similar to what you were saying before with D&D.
Every system brings something different to the table, I feel. Even between D&D and Pathfinder,
Yeah.
they're very, very close to the same game. The new iteration of Pathfinder, second edition that just came out recently, has branched off from, I guess, kind of your typical D20 system that D&D had set into motion. So with Pathfinder first edition, D&D 3.5, they were pretty similar. You could pick either one of them up and you knew what you were doing because they were that similar. They're kind of branching off into their own path. There's still a tabletop game, still both very, very fun, but it is a new experience, which kind of brings in, new things to try and new iterations, new experiences. And I feel it's the same thing with any tabletop RPG, no matter how you try to play it. I have always believed, and I firmly believe there is a tabletop game out there for everybody because of how many different play styles there are.
So do you recommend people, try a few different things, see what
Very
works
much
for
so.
them?
Very much so. Even if D&D isn't for everybody, or might not be for you, for your friend, whatever, that doesn't mean Pathfinder won't be, or Call of Cthulhu, or find what you love, and there is a tabletop out there of it. If you're a lover of video games, there is a Mass Effect, a Dragon Age, a Witcher, I think I saw one recently for Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Oh yeah, there is. Yeah, there's a new game
Mhm.
out for that. Yeah.
So there is something out there for everybody.
What types of stories do you like? What types of genres do you tend to run in your games?
I like I really enjoy the types where the people are, yes, there's the big bad, world ending calamity they're trying to stop, et cetera, et cetera. But I like for it to play into the players themselves. It's great that the players feel like heroes. It's great that they're overcoming these obstacles or these moments of, are we going to succeed here? Helping people, being those heroes. But I love it when I can get the players and incorporate their own backstories into it. You know, your village burned down as a child, and now you're seeking that person to have revenge on them. I had a game I was running where this guy was playing a goblin, and his village was massacred. It was by a orc. Well, our other party member was a half orc who we decided to make his father the one who attacked the goblin city. Neither player knew this, neither character knew this until it came up in a session. And just watching that blossom and interact was phenomenal. There are times where I'll be running a session and I will, the players won't even really think about the overarching campaign itself because they're so immersed in what's going on right then and there with their personal stories and with, that character development. That's probably the biggest thing I love is the characters growing, and it's what really makes D&D so much fun.
So you've also been a streamer in the past. You've streamed games onto
Yes.
Twitch. What's that experience like? How is that different than just doing it, for the
it
group
was
that's there?
it was challenging because I wanted to just, as a streamer, I wanted to make sure that I could find a way to involve the audience as well and not just have them sitting there watching six people playing D&D. So I would work tirelessly on maps. I would work to try to make sure that it was as visual an experience with my description. So that was another thing that I grew from, was I had to be a little bit more descriptive with things. It's sometimes you'll be sitting at a table, you'll describe things, and a player might go, oh, so it's kind of like this, or related to something, a movie they saw or something like that, which it still happened. But to kind of break away from that, because I put myself on a time constraint, I tried to put as much detail into things that maybe I hadn't thought of before. Walking into a tavern, sometimes I might just say, you walk into this kind of musty tavern, there are anchors, shields, and swords on the walls, things like that. Since I was streaming it, I decided to try and push that a step further and go, you walk into this musty tavern, the lingering scent of a burnt soup, hangs over the fire that's been left there for too long. You have the audible sound of disgruntled patrons over by the bar mingled with an argument coming from one of the rooms upstairs, or things like that, trying to further the immersion, as well as finding ways of, as I said, involving the audience. I'd come up with this idea after talking with another GM of doing these good and evil cards. And so what it was is I would spend a lot of time, and some of my players helped too. They were very, very good about helping me with it. But the viewers could donate 200 bits, and they could say good or evil, and then one of the players. And I would have a list of good and evil ideas. And my players, and I would let the viewers submit some too, and I would come up with some. We tried to tie them into past experiences from the campaign to kind of re-trigger some of those memories. But it might be something like this player becomes a cat for 10 minutes in game. And
How did that end up?
Oh, it was interesting. So our goblin had gotten very drunk, and our half-orc had carried him to bed. And then as he set the goblin down in bed, the goblin was still very drunk, one of the viewers decided to act an evil card out. And it happened to be that the player turned into a cat. And he rolled with it. He was like, he turns into this kind of small greenhouse cat. And since he was a half-orc, he's like, it's got that underbite. And everything.
So
like
it was
that.
the half-orc. It wasn't the goblin.
It was still the half-orc.
Okay. Wall carrying, or they had.
No, they had just set the drunken goblin down, and so the drunken goblin decided to roll with it. He looked at the half-orc cat now and decided to try cuddling it and stroking its fur the wrong way, and everything else. And it was a lot of fun. It cut into the story, but everyone was having such a good time. It wasn't even really anything that you noticed.
Did you tend to get more people picking good or evil?
Usually evil. Most of the time evil, because of just
chaos.
Yeah, chaos. But even in the good ones, I would try and make it something fun. Another good one of the good ones that the players had was, it was called Everybody Dance. And so what it was is they could either it was one that I had actually written. I said that you can play this card to cause one enemy to dance for, I think it was like 1 round or 1 minute or something like that. Like that's all they could do for their whole action. And I had said that if they just use the card, the enemy would get a save. However, if the player actually danced, they didn't get a save. And so my player like got that card and like literally just started like dancing on camera for about 30 seconds and everything like that. There was another one where if they did a wrap of the current scenario, all of their party got like a +2 or 3 buff to attack and damage. The players loved it. The viewers really, really got into it. Probably one of the fun things about streaming that, though, one of the most rewarding things I'll say is I would have viewers come up and be like, they couldn't wait for next week's session, or they were so immersed in it, and you'd see it popping up in the chat talking about, no, that can't happen, or things like that. And it was, as a content creator, as a storyteller, it was such a wonderful feeling to be able to share that and know that these people loved it so very much.
Did you tend to get like people who were like long running like D&D fans, like, are people who are like new to the game?
A mixture of both.
Mm-hmm.
I would have some who've been playing D&D for years who just really loved the content, and they would go on Twitter or Discord or even in their streams. I'd pop in and say hi, and they would do a long shout out like, if you haven't heard of him, you need to go check him out. He does this every weekend and it's just phenomenal. And it was very humbling. And then I get new players who would come in and they'd message me on Discord and be like, hey, I'm new to this, anything you could recommend. And so it felt really nice to be able to help further that along and just have these conversations with people.
What do you think you can, if you had to sort of guess why tabletop games and D&D have become so much more popular in the last few years, what would you say that is?
Partially movies, partially a lot of we're getting into an era where people aren't watching TV quite as much anymore. They're watching YouTube, they're watching Twitch, they're watching all of these other things. Critical Role is definitely a bigger known one. But even past that, you've got the Dungeon Run, you've got Dimension 20, you've got I know I'm missing one, and I for the life of me can't think of it. And you can see all of these stories and these different experiences, and just it's a fun way of immersing yourself, as I said, into a different world. I will say COVID probably played a fairly decent hand in it. It definitely threw a curveball at the creators for tabletop games on, okay, how can we market this, so to speak? And you had a lot of virtual tabletop things start popping up. Foundry is a big one. Roll20 kind of kicked up their game a little bit with how they could make it more immersive and more fun for players as well.
What are some, I guess I was going to ask, like, what are some of the tools that you've used aside from, Foundry, Roll20? Do you use Discord?
I do use Discord. I've used Zoom once. I prefer Discord though. And there's D&D Beyond, there's dice rollers, there's so many different things. When I was streaming, we would all get into a Discord call. And then I had an overlay, so I had to go into my streaming and drag the cameras into the boxes I had set up so they weren't just like right there. And then I would use Foundry for the maps, and the players would have their character sheets there and everything like that.
So what would you say to someone who's new to D&D, who's curious about it, who's like intimidated to start playing?
Play what you want and have fun. It is your creation, and that's what matters. You will find a GM who is going to work with you. When it boils down to it, me as a GM, and I'm not going to speak for everybody else, but I want to say that every GM at Mastermind as well just wants you to have fun. We want you to enjoy the experience and, make these great memories. Look back on this and go, you know what? I really enjoyed that. I really had a lot of fun. And just enjoy yourself. Play the character that you've always dreamed of.
Have you gotten a chance to talk to some of the other GMs at Mastermind, get a sense of the community at all?
I've talked with a couple. Not as much as I would like extensively, unfortunately, because of schedules and work.
Right.
And
you're one of the newer GMs that
yeah,
we have.
there
You came on
there
with
is
like a
that
lot
too.
of other people, but it's a big group, and everyone has different schedules.
Yeah. I have gotten a chance to talk with a couple and bounce ideas back and forth, and it's been really fun and enlightening. And I do hope that, like, I've taken definitely some of what they've said to heart and kind of looked at it, my own GMing, from a different angle or a different perspective, and kind of tried to implement some of the things that they've said that maybe I hadn't thought of. And I hope that I kind of have done the same for them.
So we are starting to wrap up, but before we go, I definitely want to give you a chance to mention your games and plug your games that are looking for players.
Yes. So I have 2 games currently right now. One is the one shot, and one is a full-fledged campaign. Both are set for the Pathfinder 2 system, but I can run them in D&D if people would prefer that. Pulling them up so I can find the titles right now. One is called Deception in a Bottle, and that is my free one shot. And it's kind of this scenario where you come into a tavern, you're the adventurer, you're coming in to kind of just relax and chill out, and not everything goes quite as expected. And the other one is called Hidden Corruption of Ehrenball, and it is a little bit of a darker one, not macabre or anything like that, but it is a campaign. It is meant to be kind of this, you're struggling and overcoming those struggles, and I think that it's a very immersive experience where there is this overarching big bad guy you're going to go in and try and deal with. However, he does tend to seem to be one step ahead of you at times, which can cause some conflict and seeing the repercussions of what he's done.
Great. And when are those? I know they're flexible, so that if someone has
I'm sorry.
No, just
Friday, Saturday, Sunday, anytime.
Cool. Very cool. Obviously, check out Mastermind Adventures.
Yes.
Check out the website. Check out Josh's profile there under our GM's list. Anywhere else that people can find you? Any socials or things like that?
Yeah, I have a Twitter at Insidious Risk, and on Twitch also at same tag, Insidious Risk.
I will also say, check out Mastermind, check out Josh's socials. Email me at KREICHMAN@mastermindadventures.com, and I would love to get you set up with either one of Josh's games or another fabulous game from our fabulous GMs. We have many available. We have, free games. We have pro games. We have games for all ages, for all ability levels. It's very fun. I can recommend them. Great. Thank you so much, Josh. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.